Welcome back to FastCast. This week will mark our second MacroCAST. In this cast, we will talk about SBIR and STTR programs through the lens of the USDA. We will continue in this manner each cast until we go through all of the federal funding agencies that participate in SBIR and STTR programs. Moving on to the show. What is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also known as the USDA, and what do they focus on?
So the USDA is actually the Department of the Interior for the United States that really focuses on food sciences. Under the USDA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, or NIFA, solely administers the SBIR and STTR programs. So as such, the USDA's focus for the SBIR and STTR programs are really focused on support of high-quality research related to important scientific problems and opportunities in agriculture that could lead to significant public benefits. So although the USDA has other focuses itself, like rural business development, infrastructure improvements and growth, being able to run high-speed internet throughout rural communities, a lot of improvement type grants like that. Under the SBIR and STTR programs, their topics really revolve around food and agriculture. And because the USDA is one of the smaller departments, their funding is actually less than other larger departments. For USDA, Phase 1 grants are limited to $100,000 and a duration of 8 months, and they're open to any small business concern that meets the SBIR eligibility requirements. And then under Phase 2, the grants are limited to $600,000 and a duration of 24 months, and those are only open to previous Phase 1 awardees. And because they're a smaller department, it also means that some of their mechanisms are a little bit different. So for USDA, proposals are reviewed through a confidential peer review process using outside experts, typically from nonprofit organizations. And the nice thing about this is that any applicant will get the full verbatim copy of the review. So rather than trying to figure out, well, what was the reviewer talking about from this summary document I got, you get every single word they put down about your review. And under USDA, participation by university faculty or government scientists in your SBIR project is strongly encouraged. It kind of shows the USDA that there's a backbone of very high-level research and kind of some confidentiality going into your project from a university or a research institute. And with the USDA, university faculty or government scientists can actually serve as a PI. And the caveat for that is they have to reduce their employment at their institution to 49% for the duration of the grant. This just kind of covers their requirement that a PI work for the small business the majority of their time, or 51%. And so under the USDA, in the event a company is actually unable to complete its grant objectives within the official grant period, or within your original grant period, the company's authorized organizational official or the project director, which USDA a lot of times will use the term project director rather than principal investigator. They can request a no-cost extension of up to 1 year for your project. So all of a sudden your SBIR Phase 1 that was limited to 8 months can now be an SBIR Phase 1 that takes place across 20 months. However, you still have to make that original $100,000 figure work. They will not refund project, but they will actually extend your due date. And the USDA is really, really big on metrics and reporting. So much, in fact, that they will actually hold back the final 15% of grant funds until a NIFA approval of the final technical report is rendered. So if you're not up to date on your reporting and you're not getting USDA all the information they need and all the information they require, you're not going to get all your money until that happens. And if you somehow manage to finish off the grant period, no more grants will be offered to your company until you submit all the required paperwork. They actually consider you delinquent in your paperwork and your reporting. And so they pretty much freeze you out from any other USDA opportunity until you get them the documentation. It just really shows that they really believe in the ideas, but they want to know about them. They want to know all your reporting. They want to know what happened. They want to know what you're going to do for the next round. And so USDA, because they're a smaller institution and because they're interested in a wide band of food and agriculture, their topic areas are a little bit broader than at some of the other agencies, and they have a much larger scope of the solutions that are sought. Essentially with the USDA, they're looking for development in 10 key focal areas. I'm not going to list them all, but a couple of them are things such as forest and related resources. So actually figuring out how to improve the crop of forest products that are coming out and what to do with what they call small diameter products. And small diameter products are actually the very small trees, I believe a diameter of less than 3 inches, that you really can't turn into a product. A lot of people just wood pulp them, but they're looking at how to actually turn them into things like biofuels. They also look at food science and nutrition. So is there a way to actually increase harvest yields and increase the actual macro and micronutrients that are being that naturally form within the food that we eat? And then one of their biggest focuses is actually on the small and mid-sized farms. So being able to increase the workforce and increase the yield of the small and mid-sized farms that are really starting to disappear from across the state or the nation and across the United States as a whole. So it's what can a company do to actually help that small and mid-sized farm grow and keep the workforce engaged that they're constantly losing to like large corporations or other large farmers that the small farmer just can't compete with. And because these areas actually have a lot of crossover between them, within the instruction package, they have a focus that tells you what topic area to apply to if your idea has some overlap. So say you have a forest and related resources product, but you're really focused on the biofuel aspect of that. They will actually give you instructions in the package. If you're looking at this aspect of forest and related resources, maybe submit to the biofuels and bio-based products topic area instead. And then USDA works their review process a little bit differently as well. So for the USDA, their SBIR program priority areas give a special focus on agriculturally related manufacturing technology and energy efficiency and alternative and renewable energy. So they consider these areas cross-cutting, and they give special consideration to the applications that address one of those priorities under the project narrative. So if you have something that fits within one of those two criteria, you actually get an entirely separate review process where your review is weighted a little bit more. It does not necessarily guarantee that they're going to you have a better chance of being funded, but they like those projects a little bit more. And then NIFA also has what they call the National Challenge Areas, which also gives special consideration. And they have 6 priorities: food security, climate variability and change, bioenergy, childhood obesity, food safety, and water. So a lot of conserving resources, actually increasing yields, and just increasing also the health of Americans through the food and agricultural products.
What are some tips for creating a USDA-focused SBIR or STTR package?
So when you're looking at doing a USDA-focused SBIR or STTR package, there's a few things that everybody should be aware of. So of course, as has been brought up time and time again, and will continue to be brought up time and time again, your very first thing you have to do are always going to be your registrations. Those are going to be your biggest requirement, because those essentially make it so that you can actually play at their table. So with USDA, besides the big 3 of the SAM, DUNS, and the SBC Control ID, just like the NIH, USDA also uses grants.gov. And again, grants.gov is really the way to access the solicitation package and to submit it. So those are going to be the biggest focuses that anybody needs to get together whenever you're making your USDA proposal. And again, all of those registrations are free for a small business. Some just take a little bit of time to complete, so you want to get started on them early. And we're going to focus on each one of those registrations individually in one of our MacroCAST, where we show you the exact screens to go through and all the information that's required. And then, of course, the secondary part is starting to create your package with that USDA focus. So USDA is actually really specific on their formatting requirements for the proposal package. So not only do they really stress the pagination, like the margins, how many pages can be in what sections, things of that nature, and also the size and the font, but even for your table headings and graphics explanations, if you choose to use them, they have very specific requirements for things such as how large it can be on the page, for your captions, where they need to be placed, how big those captions can be, even the font that those captions can be in. So when you're making a USDA package, making sure to keep up on the actual formatting requirements is going to be one of your biggest focus areas. And then with the USDA, all the documents have to be in a PDF format. And in case you don't have PDF creation software, grants.gov has built-in tools to actually turn your Word documents or Excel sheets or whatever you're trying to upload into a PDF. So that's something that a small business doesn't have to worry about going out and buying. So for the USDA package, just like every other funding agency out there, they have certain sections that they require. So the USDA uses a lot of the standard grants.gov forms, like your SF-424 cover sheet, and your RR project information, and a maximum one-page abstract. And one of the things that USDA does with the abstracts is they actually publish those. So you want to make sure that you don't have proprietary data or information in that abstract, because that goes into the public record for USDA, because it essentially shows the public how the USDA is using their funds. And then for the USDA, the project narrative is limited to 16 pages, and it has to include a lot of individual sections under that. One of the first sections is the responsiveness to USDA program priorities and national challenge areas. And those are the ones that were mentioned earlier that get special considerations. If you have any of those need to be up front and almost at the very top of your project narrative. And there's actually a section that it requires you to plug that information into. And then next they go into the identification and the significance of the problem or the opportunity. So what is the problem you're trying to solve, and why is it significant? Why does it actually impact people? Why does that problem need to be solved? And then next you do the relationship with research or research and development. So essentially, what are your eventual phase 2 plans? How are you going to move the research forward? And how are you going to make sure that everything you do aligns with the future goals of your innovation? Also, they require a section on identification and, background and rationale. So it's both the internal and the external background. Why have you started to look at innovations for that problem? And who else has actually been looking at innovations towards that problem? Are there any partnership opportunities? Are there any strategic alliances you can do? Can you work with somebody else to make it a more holistic solution? And then, of course, the USDA requires some of the technical items, like your technical objectives, which is your plan and feasibility, your work plan, which is the actual approach to solving your technical objectives. And that requires things like a Gantt chart and making sure that you know where you're going and the methodologies that are going to be used. And then also sections for things like your potential post-application, which is really your commercialization plan. Where are you going to go in the commercial market, and how are you going to make sure that your technology actually succeeds and that you can move through that 3-phase process for the SBIR program? And then lastly, when you're looking at your SBIR package, one of the biggest things, as always, is going to be your budget. So for USDA, the budget, as mentioned before, is $100,000 cap for the phase 1. And under the budget, USDA actually allows for equipment costs as long as they are integral to the success of the project. So you can actually set aside funding to buy specialized equipment to make sure your project succeeds, but you have to have a really good rationale of why you need that specific piece of technology or that specific product. So under USDA, unlike some of the other ones, foreign travel is actually allowed, but it's kind of discouraged. So if you need to travel to a foreign locale to possibly work with other professors and innovators or other research faculty, our engineers are to look at the way that other nations are handling a problem. You can do that, but try and stay locally, or actually just try and stay domestic with any of your travel. And on USDA, you can actually have a fee leveraged on top of the budget for the small business. And for their fee, they just want to make sure that it's a rational fee. So you can't charge a 25% fee on top. But you can charge a small percentage to help allay some of the cost of management of the project for the small business, items such as that. Then the fee has to be within the guidelines, and it also has to be within the total cost. So your fee that's leveraged on top cannot drive your budget above the $100,000 threshold. Still, that has to be your cap, and you have to stay under it.
Do you have any final tips pertaining to the USDA?
So it's actually a really great point. With any of these, we need to really focus on the tips and tricks, because being able to give the people the information they need, and also some best practices that not only the FAST team, but our advisors and enterprise agents have found before with working through a package, really helps to allay some of the problems that a small business may need to approach. So for the USDA specifically, the USDA evaluates each proposal across a number of different areas. And those are the scientific and technical merit of the problem, the importance of the problem to American agriculture or rural development, the probability of commercial success, the adequacy of the research objectives and the research plan, and the qualifications of the PI and other key personnel. So the USDA puts a bit more effort and a bit more stringency on the qualifications of the PI and the key personnel that are attached. So you have to make sure that they understand that the people attached to the project have the technical merit and the technical know-how, and also the business background to make sure that that project will succeed and that phase 1 proposal will come to completion and fruition. So those are really those areas. When somebody is creating their proposal package, they need to make sure that anything they put down really focuses on those areas and actually speaks to each one of them. And that's how you make sure that you're going to be able to get all the points or full points for the proposal review. Also, similar to the NIH before them, the USDA provides some very specific guidance on the elements that make a good proposal. They want the proposals to be well written. They want them to be succinct and logical. So make sure you're using as few words as possible to get across the best point that you can. You need to make sure that you have a thorough review of the literature attached. So if you're coming up with an innovation and you talk about the literature that is out there, but one of the reviewers knows that a year ago there was a paper that got published that kind of flies in the face of previous research, and if you don't have that component in there, they're going to know that you didn't really look at the literature and you're not prepared to take that innovation forward and to actually move that bar forward for technology. And you have to make sure that you're actually addressing an important problem. If it's a problem that's not really affecting the lives of most people, or that may only affect a very small subset of the population, or something that's not really critical for solving, then you kind of decrease your chances of being able to be awarded your SBIR Phase 1 or even your Phase 2, because these review criteria follow through both the Phase 1 and the Phase 2. You need to make sure that you have an innovative approach. If your approach to the problem uses the same old song and dance and you're not really doing anything new, you're not really pushing forward the bar for innovation, and you're not making great strides. And your experimentation plan needs to be well designed and detailed. They need to look at your experimentation plan, your work plan, and your technical objectives, and they need to know that you know the problem that you know what steps need to be taken to solve it, and that you have a good idea and a good timeline for getting that solution out there and for working through. And then, of course, one of the most important, if successful, your project has good commercial potential. If your project cannot actually be turned into a marketable product or material, then the likelihood of you getting funded under the USDA SBIR Phase 1 or Phase 2 is going to decrease by quite a bit. So for the reviewers are drawn primarily from universities, government, and nonprofit research organizations. So each proposal will actually be reviewed for technical merit as well as commercial potential. And because the commercial potential is more important in Phase 2 and beyond, the reviews of the commercialization plan will significantly impact the funding decisions in Phase 2 and in moving your project forward through other funding opportunities. And so because the reviewers are primarily drawn from universities and other organizations, not the USDA, you really need to make sure that you are explaining the technology in as brief a way as possible. And don't try to use a bunch of $5 or $10 words. If a 10-cent word works fine, then it'll work a lot better than a $5 word when it comes to your review process. And under USDA, one of the things they really focus on too is the companion funding pieces that they encourage SBIR applicants to go for. So although, as mentioned before, the SBIR process is a 3-phase program and there's funding for Phase 1 and Phase 2, nobody has direct funding for Phase 3. And nobody has a companion or bridge funding to get you between a Phase 1 and a Phase 2. USDA, though, has some companion pieces that they kind of point people towards when they make their SBIR application. One of them is the Agricultural and Food Research Initiative, or AFRI, which is NEFA's largest competitive grants program, and is charged with advancing research, education, and extension activities to address key problems of national and regional importance in biological, environmental, physical, and social sciences relevant to agriculture, food, the environment, and communities. That's quite a mouthful, but you can see the kind of commonalities that exist between that program and the SBIR program, because it's kind of advancing research towards food and agriculture. Also, if you're working in that area, the Biomass Research and Development Initiative, BRDI, which I believe they actually shortened to BIRDI, which is a joint effort between USDA and the U.S. Department of Energy that supports research and development in things such as advanced biofuels, bioenergy, and high-value bio-based products. They really look for people that are actually talking towards one of the 3 legislatively mandated technical areas, with foodstock development, biofuels and bio-based products development, or biofuels and bio-based products research. So what can you do to move that kind of technology forward? There's a companion funding piece for anybody that is looking in biofuels and bio-based products. And finally, the SARE program, which is a Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. So that program actually supports projects to enhance knowledge about and help farmers and ranchers actually adopt practices that are profitable, environmentally sound, and good to communities. So obviously, if somebody's working on, like, say, a small or medium-sized farm project, or they're trying to move forward technology that helps with precision agriculture, or even precision ranching and precision farming, then that could be a great companion piece. So the USDA wants to make sure that people succeed, and they want to make sure they have all the tools available to them. So that's why they really highlight those companion pieces for how do you move that Phase 1 idea to an eventual Phase 3 product where you're actually selling it out to the larger market, and you're making sure that that technology and that innovation gets out there, and it helps the state of U.S. food and agriculture.
Thank you as always, Dell, and thank you all for watching and listening. As always, please visit arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu/nmfast for more information. The next episode of FastCast will focus on the DOE.